Shannon, thanks a lot for joining me for today's session. I think it's going to be a very chill and casual chat to just kind of dive in a little bit deeper, into what goes behind the scenes with Shannon and kind of like, what's going on at Pink Lily.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This will be a fun little chat today.
For sure, for sure. You know what? I think to kind of kick things off, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about your journey, right? If you could share a little bit about yourself and your story prior to joining Pink Lily.
Yeah, so I've actually been with the brand for a year as of this past August. But before that, I've had a really fun career. So most of my background was actually spent in 20 plus years in that traditional big box retail store environment for companies such as Macy's, Neiman Marcus, and Saks Fifth Avenue. And then back in 2015, I did a little bit of a career shift. I helped this rideshare company called Lyft back in its early days transition their customer experience team from San Francisco to Nashville, Tennessee, where I spent 5 years helping scale their global support team to support that rideshare service before transitioning here to Pink Lily, which put me back in that retail mindset, which has been a fun journey.
Would you say, like kind of what's a good way to kind of put it where, how all those experiences have led you to Pink Lily and how has that kind of helped you in your current role as the director of CX there?
Yeah, I think looking back at that retail environment, really putting the customer first and really understanding who they were as a shopper when they actually entered your building was really a foundational piece for me. And I think what I really learned from Lyft was really adaptability. And then honestly being a little bit scrappy. So back in those early days in 2015, there really wasn't a lot of structure or roadmaps. So it really helped the foundation for me to be able to carve out my niche to take all my learnings in retail and how to engage with a customer and really how do you implement that at scale. So it's really been a fun little shift.
That's fantastic. And I know we had talked about, well, we're not going to dive into this like straight away, but I know that we had talked about Pink Lily's mission. That's kind of how you see that across, the products on the store. But, I don't want to give that away. If you could share, for attendees that are not sure what Pink Lily is about, what's the brand about and what's the backstory?
Yeah, so kind of stepping into the story a little bit, I think which really helps inform our mission is really a fun little story. We were founded in 2011 by husband and wife team, Tori and Chris Gerbig. Honestly, like most people across the globe, husband and wife team, student loans, working corporate jobs, and they were really looking for a way to actually spend more time together with their growing family, new family, and then honestly pay off those student loan debts. So Tori has passion for supporting the community and honestly has really an eye for fashion. So she took those two pieces together and honestly, it started from honestly their garage and has grown into the company that we are today. We've been recognized for the past 2 years as one of the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing organizations. And really getting back to kind of our mission and our purpose, the company does seek to empower women by providing a wide assortment of high quality apparel, footwear, and accessories at an affordable price. We don't really just sell products. It's really about investing and inspiring the community that we engage with, which really helps inspire our mission when we actually come to engaging with our customers as well.
And was that kind of part of the reason why you joined Pink Lily? Like, how did this come about? You've been through a very well decorated career, so to speak, and so you decided to join Pink Lily. Was that part of the reason?
Honestly, it started with that first conversation when I met with Tori and Chris. They just get it, and it's very hard to work alongside individuals who aren't really passionate about what they do. And honestly, it come out of that first time we engaged together. It was just a passion and that fire that really helped inspire me to make the decision to join the team.
I think that's so important. And the one thing that we talked about a few days before, you had mentioned, and this is really interesting thing about the customer experience for Pink Lily's shoppers as well, right? You had mentioned that this brand is catered to women across all across the board. You have the sizing of clothes on women of different sizes, different ethnicities, et cetera, all across, just to make sure that, when you select like an M size or whatever, it's all catered to each individual customer.
Yeah, we've really spent a lot of time focused on fit and really making our website personalized and engaged to the individual who's shopping. So how great is it to log into a company's website and be able to be directed directly to the sizes that you're actually looking for, and then also see someone who looks like you. So we really spend a lot of time focused on helping to support that avenue to make sure that we're really focused on the individual who's shopping and what that she's actually looking for.
Although that's fantastic. And what made you what made you all decide to have that? Or when did that shift happen? Like, what kind of prompted, like, hey, let's go down this, take this initiative? Because obviously it makes a lot of sense. It's very obvious, but what kind of led to that?
Well, one of our core focuses is customer first, and putting the customer first is actually understanding what they want and what they want to see. And honestly, that's all driven by Tori's passion and her vision. And we've been able to actually see that all the way through. Honestly, just engaging with customers to understand what they're looking for. And actually, when they ask for something, we try to deliver. So that's how that passion actually filtered through as well.
Oh, that's super fantastic. And before we kind of dive into, obviously, the vision for Pink Lily's, the vision that you have for the customer experience at Pink Lily, what's kind of if you could share some examples of, how you're collecting this feedback from your customers right now, because obviously I love the fact that, and I think any store should have put their customer first, right? That's a pretty much like a really straightforward thing. But how are you getting that feedback loop so that you know what to act on? What kind of products, the experience on the store?
We do have several tools that we use to actually help navigate that, from social listening to partnering with brands like Yotpo, to honestly really listening to all those third-party review websites out there as well, to really understand how the customers feel about the brand and how we track that sentiment through. And honestly, we just have a very repetitive cycle for how we actually cascade that feedback to all of our internal stakeholders and really assign it back and make it personalized in a way that they're able to take action on it.
Very cool. That's very cool. And which leads me to my next question. I have a long list of questions today for Shannon, just so we can dig out as much information as we can. What's your vision? Like, now it's 2021, and we're going to talk a little bit about COVID, but kind of like, what's your vision for where CX is headed, in the next few years with Pink Lily?
For our team and the customer experience with Pink Lily, we really want people to feel like they're part of the brand and really have a sense of community. So one of the first things that I noticed when I started a year ago was that we do have a sense of loyalty and trust with the brand. We already have strong customer engagement, but as we scale, how do we continue to do that and maintain that same sense of community? So being able to tie that thread back through is critical to us.
Okay, got it. And so, with what are some examples that you're maybe that you already have right now, or you're planning to implement, that will help your customer experience scale? Because you guys grew very quickly. I think, especially e-commerce has basically boomed over the past 1 or 2 years. How did you manage that? How did you keep up with the shipping delays? How did you keep up with everything, really?
Technology. So shifting from a reactive environment to proactive is critical to that. So like most companies this past year, their shipping delays was one of the top reasons for customer feedback. So how do we actually step in and recognize that when something goes south, that there's an opportunity to actually re-engage and step in and correct that issue before the customer has to tell us about it? So doing that through the different CRM tools that are available, looking through different app extensions that really put experts at the lead of that to be able to help drive some of this as well. We've recently partnered with a company called Route to provide that extra shipping insurance and that extra protection. So that's an extra avenue that comes, that customers are able to actually utilize that service to be able to help get those issues resolved with experts who are efficient at it. So those type of key partnerships are critical as we continue to grow and scale to be able to help support that as well.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And touching on that topic shipping delays, and we're this topic would definitely come up, and I think some businesses have adapted to it pretty well, and some are still, I guess, kind of struggling as this evolves. But we're talking about COVID here, right? What was it like for you when it first, I'm not sure when this probably started for you, but I think for most brands that I've spoken with, March 2020 was kind of like the pivotal point. March or April last year, what was that like for you, and how did you have to quit? Like, was there a huge shift for what Pink Lily was like before, and then that kind of falling place? Because you mentioned obviously technology has taken a big part of that to help ease the load, but what was that like, and how did you adapt so quickly?
I actually started in the middle of the pandemic as it actually continued to scale. I started in August of 2020. So,
Wow. Okay.
fortunately and unfortunately, the company was already impacted by a shift in shopping online. And there were challenges that come with that, rapid growth, and being able to support that at scale is always a challenge. And starting when I did, it was really right before the peak holiday in that traditional season was critical to be able to kind of take a step back and actually think about how do we set the foundation now to ensure that as we continue to scale, we have those fundamental basics in line to be able to help support that. And that really starts around kind of how do we look at that care principle and support our customers through that as well. And honestly, when a customer does reach out, there's usually a question or a problem. So it all starts with ensuring that you're resolving that issue, and then how fast you're actually getting back to them are two critical components of success and foundation for any support model.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you basically, when you came on board, you had to, well, so you jumped in right in the middle of the pandemic, and you had to quickly put things in place and just kind of like scale from there, and build support from there.
It does. The foundation is critical. So before you even start putting any other new technology or any changes into play, you just need to understand the scope of what's actually happening in the business at that moment and how to set up that success for long term. It's very easy to react to something, but how do you do that in a logical way that really helps support long term success as well?
And I think that's like, I definitely agree with you. And I think like a proactive, because you mentioned like shifting from a reactive to a proactive approach, that is definitely the need for businesses to shift, like, or customer service to shift from a cost center to a profit center, right? So you had mentioned, making that shift. Now, what are some examples of of proactive of having a proactive approach to customer experience? Like some of the things that I thought of, like that we typically see are simple things like maybe having some level of self-service when people are browsing your store. But what are some of those approaches that Pink Lily has implemented?
I think I lost you there for a second. I think for us, there's always going to be automations with chatbots, but honestly, at that point, it's already kind of too late. So when a customer has to reach out, there's already a challenge. So how do we support them? I think what we talked about earlier around that fit piece and how we're actually looking at sizing on our website is a unique example of proactive support that actually provides the customer what they need when they need it, but kind of taking a step back and really thinking about proactive problem recognition. I think that shipping point we spoke about earlier, if you're an international company and you're shipping outside of the United States, there's a lot of things that can go wrong while that package is in transit. Just getting stuck in customs, understanding regulatory laws, there's a lot of things that can occur. So ensuring that you're able to understand that entire journey from the time that customer places the order, the time the order is packed, the time the order is shipped, to where that package is at any given moment, and being able to step in when something in the system does not go right is critical. So being able to proactively step in and, one, resolve the issue, and two, be able to inform the customer of what's actually happening. And if something is going where that customer is not going to be satisfied, going ahead and correcting that issue and taking care of them is critical to that component as well. So there's a lot of different ways to approach that, but problem recognition in any ecosystem and being able to step in is critical. And that also, honestly, that all starts with understanding why customers are reaching out and being able to look at those from a lens of how do you eliminate that issue? And if you can't eliminate it, what is the best optimal kind of response when it is too late?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And like on the topic of being like diving deeper into the proactive bit, right? So, like you mentioned, if they're reaching out, that's kind of a little bit too late. And I kind of like that because you want to orchestrate the entire journey from the beginning, like you said. Having like sharing the appropriate fit on the store right away. So when I go in, ideally, I guess in a way, we're creating like we don't have to hit up customer service as much as possible until there's a real need to, kind of thing, right? You just want to be able to go in there, shop what you want, and then go, and then obviously you leave a happy customer. Yeah. Now, what are your thoughts around, say, hitting people up or hitting up your store your shoppers before they even ask a question? Where like for example, maybe on certain product lines, maybe if you're just like have a pop-up that says, hey, did you need any help with X, Y, or Z, depending on, obviously the product page and kind of like the intent. Do you think that's something that works? Do you think there's value in that? Do you maybe disagree that that's kind of invasive?
I think it is. There's a lot of benefits to it. So understanding that customer and actually knowing when to engage is critical to the success of any organization. So cart abandonments, and when you start looking at different widgets and individuals setting on a specific product for too long, or understanding that flow through your website is critical. So being able to proactively have that chatbot automation that pops up to say, hey, do you have a question? We can help. Is critical to anything. So being able to be there when the customer needs you and understanding when that right moment is critical. When you're shopping online, I think I keep coming back to size and fit. Those are generally those very common questions, because every company has different styles, fits, cuts. So being able to understand how you fit in that mold and to support that customer while she's shopping or he's shopping is critical to that.
Yeah, I mean that is so true. When I tried, I think like that's a brand that my wife really likes. While I'm here in Ukraine, and we tried shopping and looking for different sizing, and I think that's because typically every single, like you mentioned, the photos and all that, they're just like very standardized, right? It's never really catered to the person that you're shopping for, and so that I think alleviates a lot of the questions, right? Because like you teach people how to measure themselves, et cetera, they know their sizes, and that really takes, I think, a huge load off, the purchasing decision part of it.
Yes.
That's amazing. And so, on the topic of, being proactive and reactive, right? Have you I'm sure you've probably done some level of analysis, but, what's the comparison like, when you're working between proactive and reactive contact with your clients? Like what are some of the noticeable differences that you see out of the overall outcome? If there's any key highlights that you think you could share there.
I think it comes back to that sense of community and, what is your core mission statement? So are you really delivering on that every day? So listening to your customers through those NPS surveys, those third-party reviews, and being able to capture that feedback and that sentiment of how you're engaging is critical. And of course, often you hear more from the negative side of things when customers do reach out in some sense, or hear that negative feedback on a review. But really reading through the emotional side of it and getting to the root of the issue and ensuring that customers trust you as a brand to resolve the issue is a critical component of that.
Okay, that's very cool. It's very, very cool. And there was one thing that I was thinking about, because today we're talking about as well, how Ping Lily basically increased your overall revenue through customer experience, right? What are some ideas or some like things that you've noticed while being at Ping Lily, things that you've implemented that you consider, or even channels that you consider as good revenue generating channels? I mean, obviously delivering great CX equals retention equals repeat buyers, but like, are there any like actionable tips you could share that you've tried that has worked, or any specific channels that you think brands should focus on?
Well, I think it starts with being adaptable and flexible with the channels that you are using. All companies are going to have the basic phone, email, contacts, but technology is continuing to evolve, and social channels are evolving with them. Of course, it was Facebook and then Instagram, but then you go into Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube, understanding how to engage with all of those and being adaptable and flexible as those new technologies come out, and being able to service your customers where they are, and when they want to be engaged with, is part of that whole methodology. So that flexibility and understanding what's current and where people are engaging, and being able to step in and support them. So having that social team to be able to support that is critical to any company to be able to drive growth.
Oh, and they have, and it's interesting that you brought up TikTok as well, right? And so that they have the recent release where they're basically offering online shopping through there right now. I think, like, how is that? Is that something that you guys are considering? Have you already considering for Pink Lily? Is that already in place?
We're already there.
So, okay.
Yeah.
How has that changed though? I'm really curious. Like, how has that impacted your sales? I think that must be pretty intense.
I think all of these together ultimately will always drive someone, hopefully, to your website, and then in turn drive revenue from that standpoint. So hopefully that direct correlation is usually there to support that. But honestly, all of these are very fun and exciting avenues to engage with our end user, and we want to make sure that our brand is represented well through all of those channels. So we're active on all of these. So we have some really fun individuals who work here as part of the Pink Lily team, and that really does help drive who we are as a brand and our culture, which helps reinforce that sense of community we have with all of our customers.
Oh, that's cool. And while we're talking, I didn't bring this up at the beginning of this chat, but Close Before Bros, you mentioned that this room that you're in right now is where where a majority of like the TikTok videos, YouTube videos were shot. So Close Before Bros, if you'd like to share where did that come from?
Honestly, it's just our passion for clothing and really how that represents who we are and our individual personalities. So it's just really a fun slogan to remind us of that. Be who you are and represent yourself.
I love it. Close Before Bros. Wow. Well, you know what, Shannon, let's take a step back real quick and let's take a look at, we talked a lot about, I think, the feedback loop in the beginning, right? And you had mentioned, NPS scores. And I think that's probably something that you're running, an NPS surveys with your customers. What are your thoughts around customer satisfaction scores? Do you how does that, do you think that's an accurate, I guess, representation of whether customers are happy or not, whether people are happy, and when does that actually, I guess, make a lot of sense? Because I mean, CSAT scores, I've heard a variety of different ways to interpret it, but I like to get your take on what CSAT is to you.
Yeah, so NPS, CSAT numbers are neither good or bad; they just are. So it's really how you interpret that data to really help reinforce while you're there. So you'll have fluctuations in those numbers, and of course you'll have those objectives that you're trying to achieve. But honestly, unless you're actually listening and actually taking feedback to heart to drive change, those numbers are going to be at different points on that scale. So they honestly, just like I said, they just are. So how you interpret and use that information is the most critical.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Do you recall if, if it's not like, if it's okay to share, like, was there a particular feedback or something where you saw like, hey, you were here before, and when customers gave like this certain feedback or sentiment that you guys implemented that, and then you saw a drastic shift after that? Like, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of different instances like that, but if there's one that you could share.
Yeah, honestly, we've talked a lot about fit and sizing today on the call, but honestly, how we represent different women on our website based on the size and the fit of the different garments, even putting in different Instagram reels, and all of that piece together has all come back to feedback that we have received on improving the shopping experience and really tailoring it to the individual who's shopping.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
And I can say to implement, but it was a huge journey to really adapt it from that, and something that Tori has been personally passionate about.
That's amazing. That's just amazing. and like, let's talk about, you mentioned about the shopping experience, right? And so On the topic a little bit more about revenue as well, what are you, I guess, like what strategies are you currently using or do you have in mind when it comes to cart abandonment, right? How are you currently managing that?
Well, not managed personally by myself. So we have an e-commerce team who really drives a lot of that type of engagement.
Oh, okay.
And it's really just looking at where is the area of opportunity with the card at that moment in time, and what is that recovery for that. So any type of those conversion metrics that you're trying to drive, and being able to re-engage those users and understanding why they walked away and what was happening in that moment of time is critical to that. So it goes back to that whole feedback cycle and really doing that little root cause analysis to understand what's happening in that moment.
And currently, are you guys working a lot through the SMS channel? Like, cause I know that's like all the buzz right now since, like, I don't know, last year or this year, everyone's on SMS. Is that something that you guys are working a lot on right now?
Yeah, SMS is a critical component of any type of recovery for cart abandonment or other avenues of marketing as well.
Do you do a lot of customer service through SMS as well? Like any customer support?
We do not today, but we're looking at actually adding that as a avenue to recover in the future. Just depending, there's a lot of opt out and other challenges with SMS to contend with as well.
No, of course, yeah, for sure. I was just curious because that was like that's like the number one thing that everyone's always keeps talking about. And we've been on a couple of different sessions, and like SMS is always the like topic that people bring up. Is like, oh, hey, with SMS, if you do customer support through SMS, sometimes it might actually be a better overall experience, just simply because like people don't expect you to SMS back in an instant. But then I've heard kind of like the opposite, where it's like, hey, if I SMS you and you don't reply, it's kind of like a really bad experience overall.
Yeah, this goes back to those foundational points we spoke about earlier on the call, setting up those service levels and to make sure that if you have a real-time channel, then you're responding in a real time. So that's Facebook, DMs, Instagram, chat functionality, all those are real-time channels alongside voice that you really have to be able to be there in that moment, because we're in a very fast-paced environment and the question is fresh of mind. So responding then is when you have that active customer wanting to engage with you, and falling down and failing to deliver on that is foundation and really creates a negative environment. So being able to measure how people feel about that response time and responding in real time through an SLA guidance is critical.
And that is so important when we were talking about omni-channel customer experiences, right? Because like would you recommend businesses that are like you mentioned, most people have email and or phone support. Some people have live chat, but not across, and they might not have integrated everything into one piece, right? Like if I recall this correctly, I think you've mentioned that there's a lot of communications directly connected to your customer service team as well, right? So do you think that brands should start exploring, hey, let's integrate all our channels into one area where the customer experience team or service team can support all of them? Or do you think having them separate anyway, it's probably a better idea, based on the purpose of the department?
I would have everything integrated together as much as possible. Of course, that also comes with challenges as well, but being able to understand how customers are engaging with you and their channel preference is critical to your success. Often when you fall down and don't achieve that service level agreement that we just spoke about, that customer will reach out to you again via another channel. So being able to see all that in one central location is really critical to understand how you can actually fix that type of engagement.
And I think it's also because there's that fear, right? Especially when you're going from emails where it's, hey, I have some time to kind of respond to those tickets, like you mentioned SLAs. But when I think there's always that fear where brands, if I were to unleash chat on our website, and then if I get an influx and I can keep up with that, it's kind of like, is that will, I mean, obviously if people don't get back in time, that's a really bad idea. But I think like one thing that you've mentioned, which is great, is allowing people to reach you where they're most comfortable, right? If they can Instagram DM you, they can reach out to you on Facebook, can reach out to you in chat. I think that if you implement that right, I think people are generally happier, and that creates a better customer experience overall.
Absolutely. Most likely they're shopping your experience or your brand through that channel. So meeting them where they are will help support them as they engage with your brand, and ultimately, hopefully, to driving better results and revenue as well.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I noticed that we've been getting quite a bit of questions in the chat here. So if you don't mind, I can feel a couple of those because they're kind of in line with some of the questions that I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So we have one of these questions here, which I think is really interesting because you mentioned that you in your history in your experience you worked a lot in retail before prior to Lyft and then coming back to Pink Lily. So one of the questions was, as an e-commerce retail business, what are your thoughts on the brick and mortar pop-up experiences?
As in a pop-up store?
Yeah, I think let's assume
Oh,
probably
I think that that's a great avenue to, especially if you look at expanding into new markets or areas where customers may not really know your brand. I think it really gives the opportunity for people to actually engage with who you are. And then second to that, if you are strong in a specific market, I think that really helps drive that sense of community as well, is because you're coming out to meet the people who are shopping with you. I think it really creates a unique opportunity to engage differently in person.
That is so true. And does Pink Lily have any plans to do that, or are you guys already doing that as well?
Actually, we have looked at a couple different spots across the country, and Texas, Georgia, and a couple other different states as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, on that note, right? Let's talk about let's feel another question where we talked a little bit about Pink Lily. Now, I'm not sure if there's any if it's too confidential or not, but are there any particular CX strategies you're looking to implement to ensure that Pink Lily stays on top of everything in the coming years? Because obviously you guys are scaling rapidly. As you mentioned, you guys have been featured twice, which is amazing. Like are there any strategies you'd be willing to share to kind of stay on top of the game?
Honestly, one of those now is we are looking at how our CRM platform engages with the other tools that we use. Currently, from a chat functionality, we only have a one-to-one congruency, and we know that we have to continue to expand that to continue to grow as well. So finding a way to allow for that two congruency will allow one agent to be able to assist more customers with things like fit, cart abandonment, all those types of areas of opportunity as well. And then from our CRM standpoint, being able to connect across to tools like Klaviyo, who I know spoke or is speaking this week as well, and being able to understand that customer pain sentiment and how that connects back to other areas of opportunity to drive better engagement with more personalized recovery response as well.
Very cool, very cool. And like if I were to just jump back a little bit quickly to the tech, because you talked about how agents are kind of able to better serve multiple clients, but not multiple customers. And obviously, there is the talk about setting up. For you talked about this briefly just now about chatbots, right? And ideally, chatbots kind of alleviate some level of repeat inquiries, like, "Hey, where's my order?" Right? People can just like kind of click through that. So. The thing is, at what stage do you think chatbots are not able to kind of take that on? Because one of the most common things I've heard so far is, okay, if you have chatbots, they handle the L1 inquiries kind of thing, and then when there are more complex inquiries, that kind of goes to agents. Some people say chatbots can almost replace the human experience in maybe next 3 to 5 years, right? What are your thoughts on where chatbots are going and how that works?
I think it's a happy medium. So honestly, the way I've always approached chatbots is if it's readily available within your help center, then a chatbot serves the same function. So it allows you to answer those basic education questions around shipping, return policy, what is my tracking number. So if it's available to the customer on the site, then it should be available within the chatbot. But when it goes beyond that, it's really a chance for you to engage and really understand your customer and be able to support them in a unique way. So adding that human touch to it always makes it a little bit better.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely 100% with you on that, because I think that at least at this stage, right? I think a lot of shoppers are very used to engaging with chatbots, depending on the kind of services, be it e-commerce, be it banking, right? And so I think there is that I think people do appreciate when they know that they're chatting with the bot or a human, and people do still appreciate chatting with humans overall for certain things. Because like you said, it establishes that rapport, right?
Yes.
Versus just like, hey, I'm always interacting with the bot, that kind of depersonalizes the whole overall customer experience, I guess.
Yes.
So that's pretty crazy. So let's talk about some of the other questions here that we're getting in the chat now. I think there's one here where we talk about, let me see where that is. We have a topic about, okay, let's go back a little bit to the pandemic, right? So what are some e-commerce changes that have been made to accommodate the pandemic shifts that that you don't ever see going away?
For us, it's a little bit challenging to determine just because of our growth and where we as a company. I think for a lot of call centers and e-commerce organizations, the work from home model, I think will become more of a commonplace moving forward. It's a lot easier when you think about hiring, how we engage culturally as a brand to engage remotely, and a lot of other perks that come along with that as well. From a work from home model, and I don't see that really going away for a lot of organizations as we move forward.
But and there is a like a well, when they had the shift, people were obviously very happy. I think a majority of those were really happy that they could work remotely. But do you think like a good blend? What do you think is like a better balance? Like being completely remote, and then just maybe meeting out once or twice a year kind of thing, or do you see it as more of like I think they call it a hub and spoke model, where you have like an office that people can come to, like where you're at today to catch up with your team, and then everyone else is remote. What do you think is like a better balance for this whole work from home, work remotely setup to work out?
Well, that's a complex question to answer. There's a lot of benefits and challenges with both of them. I do prefer the hub and spoke model because I do think there's something about connecting in person to support things. And even when you think about continuous education and how teams can engage, unfortunately, I also think there's a challenge with that as you expand out and start looking at more remote markets to be able to hire and pull talent from. So it's very hard to build a model that allows people to fly or a costly association with it to be able to come back to where that HQ is. So currently, I'm fortunate that the team is still local, except for myself here in the market that we're in. So when I do come into the market, we do pull people back together to engage with those opportunities. I don't think that's going to be the norm with most organizations, though, because as the pandemic has set in and as we've moved longer into it, people have made life choices about relocating. And I think the standard would be more of a remote, and how do you look at technology, Zoom that we're using today, Slack communication tools, that consistency around meeting, improved LMS for continuous education, those type of things to be able to help support and continue that cultural engagement piece.
Very cool. And on the LMS piece, that's actually something that was at the back of my mind. Because obviously ensuring that the team members that you have, when they're obviously well trained with what Pink Lily has, your SOPs, that definitely obviously leads to better customer experiences overall, because it's a smooth operation, right? Do you think that like you mentioned, an improved LMS, so what has changed for your training program or the way you train your staff, shifting from I guess in-person setup to being completely remote?
I think from the training perspective, we haven't fully implemented this yet, but we're on a journey of actually developing an internal agent help center that really allows people to find answers and solutions in real time. However, just how we engage and grow as a brand, there are other things that we put into place to support that through a kind of learning on the fly, kind of that how do you engage around a topic weekly. We as a company have invested almost 100 hours in the last 6 months in training and development for our team that have been done through that type of model, really helping support people of where they are in their career journey. Simple things like TED Talks or basic white belt Six Sigma, or some of the really fun things that are really able to help support people in their job that they're in, but they're also helping support them on their long-term career endeavors as well. Honestly, very few of these actually cost anything. So how you're adapting to be able to support your team and pulling from resources to help do that doesn't really take a lot of time or commitment. It's just really a focus to be able to implement it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I think like I think Marilyn just commented that investing in employees is the best thing a company can do. So I 100% agree, right? When you're interested in the development of your team members, everyone's happy. That can only mean like, overall like with the business growth, everything just works out, right? Everyone's just
Yeah, I think
happy, everyone's going further.
we talked a lot about customer feedback today. So how great is it to have a team that can do some basic root cause analysis to recognize that when something isn't right, how can we actually better serve that customer? And there's a lot of different training tools to do that are not complicated, that really help inspire. And when you're able to tie that back to somebody's personal IDP and what they're looking to do, whether that's with your company or as they graduate and move on, really helps inspire trust and really drives better morale and engagement.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, that's just amazing to me. And if I were to jump into another question now, I think we still have a few more coming in, which is amazing. I love this. Let's talk about the seasonality of e-commerce, right? So there is one question here that talks about that asks, what are some of the key things we need to keep in mind for the holiday return season? Well, there's a second part to that. What insights can you share from last year's holiday return season?
Well, shipping was really challenging last holiday. So when you think about returns, really understanding and giving a little bit more flexibility. So a lot of companies have very tight turnaround times, return policies that are 30 days, maybe 60. So understanding what pain is in that ecosystem and being able to be flexible and adaptable to that is critical as well. Last year was pretty challenging with most carriers with a lot of different reasons. So being able to understand that and mold your return policy to be able to support that really also helps reinforce who you are as a company as well.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So I hope
that answered the question.
Yeah. If you have more questions, of course, feel free to just kind of throw them in, and we'll just fire it away in this conversation while you're tuning in. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. In fact, there was just something that I had a chat with a colleague of mine. I think we were talking about this a while ago. I think there was because you were talking about I think the Pink Lily's mission to empower women, right? And so I think one of that was that you guys are also partnering with the Pink Fund. I'm not sure if you'd like to share a little bit more about that, because I think that is amazing. That's amazing at what you guys are doing.
Of course, breast cancer has impacted so many people, and it impacted me personally with my mother. So connecting back to women and specifically around some of the diseases and different things that have impacted our community's lives, whether that was through themselves or a family member, is critical for us as a brand to be able to understand and give back in a way. It's something Tori's family has personally been impacted by. And since I don't think she'll be listening today, we're actually doing something pretty exciting here around the office tomorrow to help give back in that way as well. And honestly, ultimately, we just want to be able to help drive change and hopefully find a cure one day. And doing that through celebrating all women and helping celebrate those survivors as we go through this. So that's part of the reason we give back in the way that we do.
Oh, that's fantastic. And if there are attendees today that they're interested in somehow helping out, or kind of like working together with Pink Lily on this, is there a way to kind of reach out?
Yeah, actually through the Pink Fund's website is the best way. Cool. To be able to donate, or they also do other types of fundraisers throughout the year as well.
Okay, got it. There you guys have it. Because I thought it was really amazing that my colleague shared that. I was like, wow, that you guys are doing this. And I think it's also amazing because, as a business, when there are ways to give back to help people, I think that's just like one of the greatest joys, I think, to be able to just kind of like help people prosper together, right? And like you talked about individual development, like giving back to society. That's just amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of different opportunities out there to engage with your community through different funds. Of course, the Pink Fund is one that we're passionate about. Of course, I'm also passionate for St. Jude in Memphis, which has personally impacted me. I lost my sister a little over 20 years ago of leukemia. So there's often other ways that you can engage and give back. Some require funds, but there's also other ways to do it as well. I think I've painted a lot of classrooms in my career and helped mow yards and do all kinds of crazy things to be able to help support the community in very unique ways.
That's amazing. That's just amazing, man. Wow. Well, you know what? I'm gonna jump back into the Q&A here. I think we had there was one question here which is really interesting. Okay, well, I okay, I'll just ask it anyway. I'd love to get your take on this.
Okay.
The question is there a persona? And I assume he means he or she means it's a customer persona. Like, is there a customer persona that is beyond help? Put that in quotation marks. That is beyond help.
I'm sure there's lots of ways to answer this, but I would say actually no. I think it's really understanding who that person is. And honestly, in my career, I can say I've had a lot of challenging conversations because when something does go wrong and trying to recover that experience, it can be a challenging phone call to get on. And usually at where I've been in the positions I've held, ultimately that had come to me to be able to help resolve. And I think it's always important to balance honesty and trust and transparency. So when a mistake does happen, I am very passionate about being honest about that and being transparent that, yes, we did make a mistake and this is what I've done to correct that, and then how we're going to address it moving forward. So it's very easy to throw your hands up. I do recognize that, but I always like to make sure that I'm there for my team and to be able to step in and support when there's a little bit extra care required to recover that experience.
Transparency. I think that's what Eric was talking about just now as well, transparency. So, but would you say like and I kind of like that, like you mentioned that there's a really difficult situation, and like obviously if the brand store has kind of messed up there, owning up to it and kind of sharing what the solutions are, that would be like I guess a good way to kind of turn the situation around. Like I think just like you said, being purely honest, sharing kind of like what the next steps, actual next steps are, and that's a better way to kind of turn around a bad customer experience versus kind of I want to use that word, but kind of faking your way through it.
Yeah, in some sense, I can say that, but I don't really take it as faking it. To be honest, to me, it's more around engaging with that person. And
oh yeah, no, of course, yeah,
yeah. It's not always the same path every time. I wish there was a magic formula to be able to say, do this. I have found a phone call and really having all of my steps in place when I get on that call and preparing for it is critical as well. And then already having some seam to understanding what's going to take to be able to recover it. Honestly, I have had those calls where it ended with no resolution. But actually reiterating that point that at some time you're not able to completely recover it, but staying close to it as well. Honestly, I've had negative experiences that didn't get to a resolution, but I always do a little mark on my calendar and follow up, 3 months, 4 months later, just to check in and try to recover that experience at a later date. Sometimes giving a little time between it. But
so
I always follow up. Yeah.
No, but I think that's great advice. I think yeah, because like one of the things like I read before, it's sometimes people just want to air their frustrations anyway, and so kind of trying to address it there and then if people are still not, let's say, a little frustrated, it's not always easy to just kind of like get that sorted out, right? I think a lot of one of the things that you brought up was a lot of it is listening. I think that's like the most important thing in customer experience, especially, or customer
Yeah,
care.
sometimes that frame of mind on how they're responding in that moment. Honestly, I've been that frustrated customer myself. So I've had a lot of those phone calls on the other side of the foot. So being able to understand and put yourself in their place is critical to that, and that transparency. Yeah, I think, understanding and listening is part of it.
I love it. And I think like, yeah, transparency definitely builds trust, and that makes a lot of sense. There was one question that just came in, and I think this is also kind of related to the chat automation piece and also talking about frustration, right? So the question is, some customers are frustrated by chat automation. So do you reach out to those customers individually when reviewing chat transcripts?
Honestly, we have. I love a detractor recovery program to be able to go back after those opportunities. And honestly, when I think about how those chatbots are programmed, listening to that feedback and what a better resolution would have been, sometimes it's simple of readjusting that chat flow to better serve what that customer is actually saying, or actually providing them with an avenue of how to get a better resolution in the future as well when a question does happen.
Okay. I hope that answers the question there. Is it Acadia? I lost you, I think. There we go. Well, thank you, Shannon. And while the questions are still coming in, I think since we have about 8 more minutes on the clock, I have one question, and that is, do you have any parting wisdom for other CX folks out there or brands out there when it comes to, having a more revenue, well, let's say revenue centric, but building great customer experiences that ultimately translate to, revenue increase?
Well, we've talked about it a couple of times today. So making the customer the top priority across the organization. A lot of times when you work for a company, they see that as the customer service responsibility. So how do you make that translate across, and everyone from shipping to your returns team, to your e-commerce team, everyone understanding their role in driving a better customer experience is critical. Second, I don't think I would underestimate the importance of building an easy, consistent, reliable customer experience. So starting with those service level guidance and really how you're actually resolving those issues is critical to that. And then ultimately, you need to earn the right to the customer's peace of mind and wanting to continue doing business with you. Not everything has to be super complicated, especially in the early stages. And that's where we are as a company right now, is those early stages of building out that customer experience. Business itself is complex, but actions within it shouldn't be.
Okay. Okay, got it. Well, thank you. I hope those parting words are wisdoms from from Shannon. Hope that helps a lot. And one of the things that I always like to ask everyone that I have a chat with, helps me as well, is do you have any, I don't know, particular books or resources that you recommend people check out to, deliver great customer experiences, maybe company transformation or so on and so forth?
I don't think it's really directly around customer experience, but 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is one of my favorite books. Okay. It really speaks to understanding who you are as a leadership team and your organization and how you engage with each other. I think it's one of the most critical parts of my leadership journey is really, what does that look like, and how do you help support your peers in that growth at the same time?
So that's called 5 Dysfunctions of Your Team. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I will check that out. I will I will definitely check that out after this.
It's a great book, but I also suggest the audio version as well.
Okay, cool. Audiobooks, love that. And if some of the attendees here have any questions or things they might want to pick your brains on for customer experience, well, what's the best way to contact you?
Honestly, through LinkedIn, Shannon Hassell at Pink Lily. So I'm pretty easy to find on there, but doing a quick little search.
All right, cool. So LinkedIn, that's where you can find Shannon. And okay. Well, since we still have a few more minutes before we round it off, I think there was another question from Russ Rasoli, if I said that right. So the question is, do you have any tips on gaining increased internal buy-in for an e-commerce effort when the organization isn't e-commerce focused?
Honestly, I think taking a step back and understanding who the individuals are that you're seeking to get buy-in from, and what are their priorities. and how will this change impact them? So starting there and understanding what their priorities are, and then kind of engaging with them to align to see if there's any commonality in it.
All right, I hope that answers the questions. And feel free to keep on coming in. We do have a few minutes more to kind of go over that. Well, if you have any more questions for Shannon while we have him here. But in the meantime, yeah, I think we had gone over so many. I was like, I'm trying to like put them all down here. Like there were a lot of different topics that we talked about. There's a lot of insights, and I think someone had mentioned that there's going to be a replay, so I will personally watch that myself just to kind of make that kind of get that going. But yeah, it was really great catching up with you, Shannon. This is a really great conversation.
It was,
I think there's a lot of insights that you've shared with us.
Yeah, thank you, and thank your team for everything that they do to support us as a brand every day as well.
Oh, I mean, it's a pleasure. We're super happy. I mean, this is and knowing that, again, that this supporting your brand has also led on to, a lot of other things that we can give back to society. That's just amazing. That's kind of why we started this anyway. So we're really happy that we can be a part of this journey with you.
Yeah, and if I had to add another little tidbit, often when companies outsource part of their customer experience team, those teams feel like separate entities. It's really important culturally to bring those in fold and to make sure both teams function as one. I think that would be something else that's been critical to my success as well, especially in my prior job and then now with Pink Lily, is really culturally, how do they engage with the brand and understanding that culture. Honestly, a lot of us, when we outsource, those team members are outside of your shipping radius or your company's business. So helping them understand the brand through different experiences is critical to success as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and I think that integration piece makes a lot of sense because you want to have that departments ideally like kind of like viewed as one, right? Everyone's connected, everyone understands each other. That makes a lot of sense. All right, cool. Well, I think someone says, can someone put the name of that book in the chat? I will add that in there. I think I can just put that in there right now. 5 dysfunctions of your team, right? If I got that right. There we go. So I'm just putting it in there to close this off. Well, cool. Well, Shannon, thanks a lot for joining me today, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this together for eCom Week LA. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions or thoughts that you want to pick Shannon's brain on, please find him on LinkedIn. It's Shannon Hassell, Pink Lily, and you'll be able to find him. Yeah, fire away your questions. And yeah, thanks for your time, Shannon. It's amazing catching up with you.
Thank you. This was great. I appreciate your time today.